So good afternoon everyone, and welcome to my talk, which is Puffed Up with Pride, which you're probably thinking is maybe a bit of an odd title when we're talking about customer experience. But how many of you can relate to this character, either as a customer or within our own teams or within your business? Just put a little something in the chat box to see whether or not what your view is on this person. Does anybody recognize this person in their own businesses or when you've been a customer? We're all familiar with them, aren't we? And obviously when you get served by somebody like this, you're not going to get a particularly good experience. And I would say that this particular individual isn't necessarily very proud of what they're doing. And if they're not going to be proud of what they're doing, that's certainly going to be evident to the customer. So that's why I picked today's session. And if we think back to some of Katie's stats earlier, that companies that excel in customer experience are 150% more likely to have engaged employees. So that's really the route that I'm going down, is about engaging your employees so that they are proud to work for you, they are proud to serve your customers. So how do we actually do that? Well, you may be familiar with the quote by Simone Smith that says customers will never love a company until its employees love it first. So what can we do to help our employees to love our business? So what I'd like to cover in our session is, first of all, is to talk about how it feels to be proud of something. I'm going to do a little exercise, which will be interested to see how it works online rather than actually in the flesh. I'm going to be talking about 3 critical management strategies to help for your team to feel proud of the job that they're doing, and then talk about how to take action. And because we've only got 20 minutes or so together this afternoon, I'll also talk about how you can actually continue the conversation if you so wish. A little bit about me. I started out in hospitality. I had my first job in hospitality in a pub when I was 13. Now, obviously, I wasn't old enough to work behind the bar, but I was able to get to work in the restaurant. And so that was my first taste really of delivering good customer experience. And of course, in hospitality, people are buying absolutely that experience. Yes, the chips have got to be good, the burger's got to be good, whatever it is. But it's the experience that people are having which makes them want to go out to eat rather than eating at home. And I've worked in hospitality now for, dare I say it, nearly 50 years. So during that time, not only have I been delivering, I actually started out on the front line and delivering service, then was in contract catering for many, many years, where I was training people in customer experience and customer service. And now I moved into leadership development. And so what I focus on now is really bringing those two together, because I just, as a couple of people have already mentioned today, how engaged your employees are has a massive, massive impact on your customers' experience. So I still work with hospitality businesses, also work with leisure and tourism businesses. So of course they were the first to be hit by everything that's going on at the moment. I'm also an author. I've written two books, and I've got numerous tips as well. So my most recent book is Creating Service Superstars. So enough about me. Simone has already pinched my thunder for the next slide, which is, I'm sure that most people are very familiar with this quote from Maya Angelou. I've learned that people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And that, of course, is critically important for how we leave our customers feeling, but also it's critically important to how we leave our employees feeling, because if they're not feeling positive, then that rubs off on our customers. So I would like to, first of all, to get us thinking about, well, actually, what does it mean to feel proud of something? So I would like to set you a little challenge now, and I'm going to give you 30 seconds or so to think about this, is to think about something or someone that you are proud of and why it makes you feel proud. And if you're feeling brave enough, if you're happy to share it, to put something into the chat box, just a one-liner or just a couple of words to let me know that you've thought of something, and if you're happy to share that, what that thing is. So I'm just going to give you 30 seconds to do that. Okay, so you've hopefully all had an opportunity to think about that. So I'm not going to ask you to respond to this, but just to reflect on how it feels when we think about something or someone that we are proud of. And if I was stood in front of you, if you were in front of me as an audience and I asked you to share that, I mean, 9 times out of 10, people will say, actually, it feels really good. It usually brings a smile to your face. It actually not only alters your facial expressions, but also your whole posture. It just helps you to give you that little bit of a buzz when you're thinking about those things that make you feel proud. So wouldn't it be fantastic if we could emulate this with our team members? So that's what I would like to do, is look at 3 strategies that we can use to create that in our team. So what are those 3 strategies? Well, the first of those strategies is showing our team respect. And I think we've already seen in the news in the last few days about how some companies have really got this right and some companies that have got this disastrously wrong in terms of how they have dealt with people, with laying people off and so on, and communicating with them. So thinking about that within the customer experience space is, first of all, is showing them the same courtesy and care and respect that we would expect them to show our customers. Because if we're not demonstrating that to them, you're then setting the precedent that it's okay not to be courteous. And it's stupid little things, and it's almost, don't want to be patronizing, but I do see it so often. It's just the simple little things like a good hearty good morning at the beginning of the day, good night at the end of the day, thanking people for a job well done, asking about their holiday or their day off, and simply saying please and thank you. And no one will necessarily make note of it when you do it, but they'll certainly notice when you don't do it. So just having those general courtesies. The second one is acting with integrity. And Claire talked about integrity in her session earlier. And so for me, integrity, it does sort of demonstrate your values are. Claire had that lovely little analogy of the Ferrero Rocher, and what's on the outside of the inside matches up with that. And it's the same in your business. How do you actually demonstrate to your team that what you're saying, you're actually, you're walking the talk? And for me in the workplace, very often this is how you speak about, for me, thinking about how you talk about people when they're not in the room. So how do you talk about customers when your customers aren't within earshot? Is it okay to badmouth customers? Well, of course it isn't, because if you're doing it, then that actually sort of sets the precedent for your team. But how do you talk about your colleagues? How do you talk about the business and the people at the top of the organization? So all the way through, and most importantly, how do you talk about people's colleagues when they're not in the room? Because what you're sending out a signal is actually, well, getting people to think, well, if they're saying that about her when she's not here, what do they say about me when I'm not here? So that integrity is absolutely paramount. Asking for their opinion, and I've had a couple of examples already about this. So asking people for their views from a customer point of view. 9 times out of 10, your team are going to be closer to your customers than you are. So they are going to get to hear about things. And I think it was Katie talked about this in her session. Ask your team what they think, and not only ask them, but value their opinion and showing that you're following those things through. And finally, showing that you care about them as much as you do about the bottom line. And again, some great examples in the news over the last few days about how some organizations have dealt with their employees, putting their employees first and recognizing, yes, it is going to be inconvenient if people are working from home, or that you actually have to completely shut up shop, which is with a lot of the businesses that I work with have had to do. But you're really concerned about their well-being as well as your customers and the profit. So show respect for your team in the same way that you would want them to respect your customers. The second strategy is to demonstrate your trust. Now, most managers want to be trusted, but this really, for me, that starts with you demonstrating trust with your team. So how do you do that? Well, first of all, make it as easy as possible for yourself by playing to people's strengths. Because if you know that somebody is really good at a particular task or a particular activity, if you give them that to do, then you're it's much easier for you to actually trust them to get on with it. And 9 times out of 10, the things that people are good at, what they're strong at, are the things that they enjoy, and vice versa. So it gives them a sort of better experience for themselves as well. Once you've done that, it's then a lot easier to empower people. And Katie talks about this a lot in her session, about empowering people to do what you have paid them to do. And I think Chloe talked about this as well. So for an example, if one of the examples that I tend to talk about when I'm working with businesses is empowering people to deal with mistakes, to deal with complaints. Because if you don't, first of all, from the employee's point of view, they don't feel trusted. Secondly, from the customer's point of view, it means then that it takes a lot longer, and it's very frustrating when we hear as a customer, oh, I'm really sorry, but I don't have the authority to deal with that. And of course, from the business point of view, it takes up supervisors and managers' time having to then go and deal with it. So really, if we don't empower our team to deal with things, and I always think actually it's to empowering them to do whatever they think is best for the customer in that current situation. And sometimes that may be a cost short term for the business, but longer term, it's going to come and pay you back tenfold. Because coming back to one of the questions that that Simone was asked, is about, you know, how do you do that, and how do you empower people to do those things? And I have a little saying which is about glue, which is about giving little unexpected extras. So how do you get that surprise element, which Simone was asked about? And if you let your team know what are the things that they actually can give without getting authorization, let them be the ones that come up creatively with a solution to the customer's problem, by using, just knowing what the situation is, having identified what's important to that customer, so they are in a position to give those little wow moments. So glue is about giving little unexpected extras which do create that wow. The third area under trust is flexibility. Now, most of us will know about people who are now working from home. So that in itself gives opportunity to demonstrate trust in the way in which people work. But when they're working from home, also thinking about actually, well, do they need to be working from 9 till 5 or whatever their normal shift is? Because if they've got their kids off school and from home, is it okay if they're doing their work between 8 and midnight, if that's what they choose to do, giving them that flexibility, but also thinking in terms of the way in which they do their work. If the end result is the important thing and the method by which they get there isn't that critical, then if they know what it is that they're aiming for, then it's a lot easier then for them to work out the best way to do it. And I can't remember who it was, but somebody referred to earlier about having scripts. And yes, I think in principle, having sort of some key elements in a script, and obviously if you're in something like financial services where there are certain things that have got to be covered, then that's one thing. But if we know that the goal is to, we've heard people talking about having empathy with the customer and showing that we care and we've got their best interests in heart, allowing an individual to come up with their own script in order to do that, something that they're going to feel comfortable with, that comes from the heart rather than sounding scripted, but also that you're trusting them to come up with the most comfortable way for them, because ultimately they're going to be far more likely to remember something that they have put into their own words rather than something that we've said, no, you've got to do it this way. And then finally, which sort of in effect really sort of covers all of these three, but sort of bundling them all together, is about giving them responsibility. And when you give people responsibility for a particular area of the business or a particular task, with that then comes that sense of ownership, and when they then do a good job, that in itself creates that sense of pride for that individual. So give them responsibility. So show our trust in our team. And then the third area is recognition. How do we actually recognise people for a job well done? Well, first of all, giving them feedback. And it's very easy to give some very sort of glib, casual feedback without having any particular, without having much value to it. So the more specific we are with our feedback, then the more value it adds. So rather than general, oh yeah, thanks very much, that was really well done. If we can go into some specifics, I really appreciate the way that you dealt with that particular situation with Mrs. Smith because you did X, Y, and Z. So the more specific it is, the more credibility, the more weight it has, the more meaning it has. When we've had feedback from a customer, of course, sharing that as well. And we talked earlier about getting those stats back. And I think it was Katie who talked about sharing the good results with the team when you have something that's, so something that again, that is meaningful. Secondly, acknowledging people when they have done a good job. So it's one hand in terms of just giving that very specific and direct feedback, but acknowledging when people have put themselves out. So maybe at the moment, an example might be that people are making personal sacrifices for the benefit of the team or to help out a colleague. Acknowledging people when they have come up with a creative solution to a customer query or a customer problem, and they've gone out of their way to just find something that's going to keep that customer happy. Or maybe the acknowledgement for people that have worked very busily behind the scenes on a particular project, even if that project hasn't come to fruition for whatever reason. I'm sure there are lots of projects being shelved at the moment, but acknowledging the effort that's already gone into that. I love awards. And the reason that I love awards is because by putting either individuals or a whole team forward for awards, it shows that you feel that they are worthy of that recognition. Now, whether you win the award or not isn't the critical thing. It's just the fact that you've put them forward for an award. So look for opportunities to give your team or your business as a whole that recognition by finding rewards that are appropriate. Now, of course, there are lots of customer service awards, but it doesn't have to be specifically a customer service award. Any award that you're putting people for that actually they can relate to and see how they contribute to that will help to give your team pride in what they're doing. A simple thank you. Simple thank you at the end of the day. Also in terms of when they've put in particular effort. But just thinking about what Simone has been doing in terms of thanking customers, having something like a greetings card, something sent through the post. And I know that quite often people think about monetary awards as a way of thanking people. I know that if I would rather have a bunch of flowers sent to me or bought in for me anytime over and above 10 quid in my pay packet. So it's finding something that would particularly resonate with that particular person. So finding something that's personal for them, because obviously flowers aren't going to do it for everybody. But what is appropriate for that particular individual to show that recognition and to thank them on a personal level, rather than it being something that's very, very generic or very bland. And then finally, to celebrate successes. So celebrate successes within your business. So maybe you've won a big contract, maybe that you've renewed a contract, maybe you're celebrating X number of years in business. So those are internal celebrations, but you can share those celebrations with your team, but also it's important to let them know how they've contributed to that. You might also want to celebrate an individual and their successes, so the things that they have achieved. So maybe they've just passed some particular exams in your business, so showing them the recognition there. But also celebrate things outside their work, because that shows them that actually you're interested in them as an individual, not just as an employee. So maybe they just passed their driving test. Maybe they've just had their first grandchild. Maybe they have just made some big contribution to a charity by running a marathon or done some fundraising event. Those are all things that people love to be able to share in the workplace, and recognizing those things and recognizing them as an individual, as well as just somebody that is there for, totally for the business. So Naeem asked us also to think about 3 takeaways. So my 3 takeaways are think about these 3 headings. So first of all, show your team respect. Secondly, to demonstrate your trust in your team. And finally, to give them recognition for their contribution and a job well done. So my challenge for you is to take some of this away. And if you only do 2 things, the first thing that I would like you to do is that if you was just to take one idea from what I have covered today, that you could actually could implement easily and would have an impact on your team's sense of pride, what would that one thing be? And if you're happy to share that in the chat box, that would be fantastic, because then it gives me some feedback. And what could you do tomorrow to get started? Even if your team are working remotely, what is one thing that maybe you could do to get that off the ground right now? So that's the first thing. So if you want to put something in the chat box, then it would be great to hear those things. The second thing is it's maybe difficult at the moment, but to share these principles with your managers and ask them to identify one action that they can start doing tomorrow to make their team feel proud. Now, if that's something that can't be done tomorrow because of working remotely, is that something that you can be thinking about implementing over the next couple of weeks when you've had an opportunity to talk to them more about some of the things that we've covered? Because now more than ever, where people are potentially feeling quite insecure in their jobs, then more so than ever, it's important to give them that pride in what they're doing and give them the recognition, because most of them are working under very, very difficult circumstances at the moment. I mean, most of us are. So those are the two things that I would really urge you to take away. If you would like to learn more, I'm going to put up my contact details in a moment. I have got a free download here if anybody's interested in this, the 7 big mistakes many business owners or their managers unwittingly make, resulting in high staff turnover, low productivity, but also important for today, inconsistent customer service, and how we can avoid making those mistakes. So if that is something that you are interested in, you can get those through my website, which is naturallyloyal.com/EE for employee engagement, or just drop me a line or give me a ring, and I'll be very happy to take your call or to send you an email or connect with me on LinkedIn, which I'm Caroline J. Cooper on LinkedIn. So I don't know if there are any questions that anyone would like to ask. I can see there are a couple of questions in the Q&A, so let me just have a look at those.
So hi, Caroline, just before you go to the questions, can I just, really good session again, you know, what you talk about, and obviously you started working when you were a young girl, because you started working so many years ago, as you said.
Yeah, giving away my age.
A lot of experience and knowledge there, but a couple of the things you said were really useful. You know, the old be polite to people, please and thank you, that's definitely gone out of fashion, hasn't it?
It has, excuse me. It has, and it's actually noticeable now when people do it, and you get people, and it's difficult because I think I've had stand out, you won't have seen me, but you know, you see people walking into, actually I'm going to give you an example of, this is going back 3.5 years, but I remember being at a meeting on the day of the Brexit announcement, so the Friday morning when the results came in, and the doom and gloom that was in there, and everybody with their heads, you know, hung down and scowls and all the rest of it. And I'm thinking, my goodness, are you going to go back to your businesses like that? Because what sort of message are you conveying? And I think it's so important that as a business leader, so it doesn't matter what role you're in, whether you're a supervisor, you're a manager, or you're the owner of the business, that you really do set the bar in terms of what you expect from your people. You know, you need to walk the talk. So it's in terms of all of our behaviours, but I think particularly that showing that yeah, those common courtesies of the please and the thank you, and just a simple good morning and a good evening makes such a massive difference to people, and said with sincerity. So it's not, you know, sort of have a nice day now. You know, we don't want that, because we wouldn't expect our team to be doing that with our customers. So it needs to be sincere.
I mean, I work with a lot of retailers and businesses. And one of the things I always make them do is, you know, where possible, you know, you open the door, good morning, sir, nice to see you. You know, I get them to do those things, which a lot of the time they find it, sometimes they're saying that's going a bit over the top, but customers do appreciate being appreciated, being treated with respect. So let's take some of the questions. Can you see Q&A?
Yeah, so Luke has asked, just how important is it to apply and win CX awards each year, and what are the benefits? I think that in terms of the awards, do you know, look, I don't even think it matters whether they're CX awards or not. I know in the context of what we're discussing today, it's all about the customer experience. So if there are appropriate categories, appropriate awards where you feel that you have got something to offer that's going to stand out, I mean, obviously it's great to be shortlisted. But I think that any award that you're putting your team forward for will give them that little bit of a buzz. And I think often people think, oh, you know, we're not ready for that, we're not ready for that yet. Actually, just do it. Just do it, because you'll learn from the whole experience. You'll hopefully any awards are worth their salt will give you some feedback on how you've done. And what that then gives you is a little bit of a benchmark as well. And it gives people that little bit of, there's a bit of measurement. You've got some outside views coming in, which aren't necessarily just from your customers. It's a, you know, it's a third party view of what you're doing within your business, about how you can make improvements. And so I think therefore that you know, I think the choice of awards is important. I do know some businesses where they say, oh, you know, they just don't really get what we do. And I think that, you know, sometimes we elude ourselves to thinking that that actually is the case. But sometimes, you know, you've got to have a good match for this particular industry that you're in, so that they do understand what it is that you're offering. But I think that any awards, being put forward for any awards, always gives a great buzz for any business. And if they win, yippee, then that's obviously cause for celebration.
Can I just add to that? The only other thing I'd say, as well as what Caroline said, is do it for the cause, not the applause.
Yeah.
Award winning, so you can do a great job. If all you did was become award winning to win an award and then you go back to normal, there's no point.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there, you know, actually, that if you get shortlisted one year, then maybe your goal next year is to be the one on the podium and getting that award. But if you don't get shortlisted, but you think that actually that's done what, by putting yourselves forward for that award has made you focus on a particular area, and there, you know that there's more work to do there, then your goal should be then to get shortlisted for next year. Next year. So it is about, and it's about incremental improvements as well. And if it just encourages you to make that little bit of an incremental improvement and get the buy-in from your team to do that as well, then there's got to be some good in that. Nathraj, I hope I pronounced that correctly. Thanks for an awesome presentation related to the subject matter you just covered. I would like to share that if, as a manager, you do not have the sponsorship of your top management, then all that effort and results would be difficult to achieve. Absolutely, absolutely, so important that people are bought into that, because if you don't get that, and so you covered earlier about, you know, why CX programs fail, and part of that is when you don't get the buy-in from the top, it's an uphill struggle. So absolutely, you've got to get that buy-in from the top. Here again, we are in the emotional sphere. Yes, definitely is all about emotion. So in this context, emotions of your team. What would be your one big guidance regarding the above, and what could be one of a pitfall? In terms of my guidance, is sometimes it is hard work, but sometimes just getting on with it anyway. So if you are bought into the whole idea of the engaging your team, I have seen organizations where, yes, the person at the top isn't bought into stuff, but actually they're just like, okay, I'm gonna, you know, make sure that my team, they've got everything that they want and they need, and that they've got that respect, and I trust them, almost sort of irrespective of what the person at the top is doing. But also, I think that if that's happening, that does tell you something about what's in, you know, the values of that business. And Simone talked earlier about, you know, one of the industries that she's worked in, and I've seen that as well, and just say, actually, do you know, this just isn't a good fit for me personally. So I think if you're a manager or a supervisor working in that environment, is that you might want to ask yourself, is this the best fit for me, if not getting that buy-in from the top and that they're not committed to it. And they might be, you know, coming out with all the right words, but without any of the sincerity behind it. I hope that's probably not really helped, but I think it is, you know, it's just so critical to have that buy-in from the top. Claudine, hi Caroline, great interesting presentation. Is it possible to get the slides? I'm going to hand it over to Naeem for that, but having said that, Claudine, if you just drop me a line personally, I'll happily send you the slides if you would like the slides for my presentation, then yeah, certainly can do that. So just drop me a line. Hi Karen, what course of actions do you suggest to onboard and align employees who are highly resistant to change? So I'll say it's quite difficult to change a leopard's, can you change a leopard's spots? But having said that, I think sometimes they don't see the personal benefit for them or the impact. So you've got to focus on what's in it for them to change. And if it's all about the bottom line and it's all about the customers and not about them as individuals, then again, it's going to be very, very difficult. Sometimes you can hit that spot and you get that buy-in. Sometimes you have to admit defeat and think, actually, is this person a good fit for the business? Because what the danger is, if you've got somebody who is very influential, they're a bit like a rotten apple in a barrel, and sometimes their colleagues will see through that. But if they are influential, it just sort of it's just festers with everybody. So sometimes you have to bite the bullet with some of those people and decide, are they right for the business?